good. Wendy, I had a really good weekend. I got a really good weekend.
Like birthday.
It was birthday weekend, first of all, but secondly, I got 2 buyers under contract. I got a new buyer signed, and I have a new listing coming on in next.
On your birthday weekend? Birthday every weekend.
Awesome.
Rick,
So we have a very large luxury home that needed cleaning really fast. It was a weekend, it was Saturday, and we needed the house completely cleaned. It's 8,000 square feet on Sunday, which if you remember was Father's Day and Sunday. And so these ladies in the back here, Ingrid from Rain and Shine, brought a team of 5 people there, arrived there at 8 AM and left there at 7:30 PM.
well done.
And the contractor working on the site is Amit Sella, and he does lots of big stuff. He was
Yeah.
incredibly impressed with what they did, as am I,
Yeah.
so that was very good work. And obviously I called her on Saturday and they had their whole team Sunday, so.
Awesome.
Don't do that to them. But,
Wait, that's a one and only.
That's only happened one time.
Love that. Love it. What else? What else is good?
We have a new team member, Danny, here. She's here for Danny's like, great, hi. And she's actually been working on a flip for the last year or so, and we are listing it next week.
Awesome. Awesome. Fun.
Yeah.
Is that your first flip? No. Okay.
Oh, no.
She's like, no, this is like regular. Awesome. What else? What else is good?
Wonderful. Kelly's willing for for a great class yesterday.
Did you learn a lot, Heather?
I did.
Oh, John, did you go to the class?
No.
I did learn a lot. It was a great class, so,
Awesome.
I even learned something.
Awesome.
yeah. Yeah.
Even you.
I think I think Chris giggled at me a few times with some of my comments, but it was good.
No comment.
No comment. All right, one more. What else we got?
I'd like to, I don't think she's on, but Maureen helped me out tremendously because it's my first listing and I had opened both Saturday and Sunday. And she was helping out. So, yeah, I just wanted to thank her.
Awesome.
Yeah, she couldn't be here today. She told me she wasn't gonna be here.
I don't know. All right. So June calendar, we're wrapping up. We have our new construction with Black Dog tomorrow. And that is, oh, there it is. 1038 Lake Street. So again, if you haven't been to these, this would be a great one to go to and just be able to get to see the finishes, learn a little bit more about that particular home, about that builder, and ask questions in regards to an opportunity to say, hey, as an agent, how would I give you value, or vice versa, right? Because a lot of times new construction's coming up and people are like, I don't know how to, provide value to my clients when they're working in new construction. There's actually a lot that you can provide. Candy.
I make a request that if you're planning to go to this, if you could sign up on the link, just because, we want to make sure that we're utilizing their time to do this for us. And so I'd love to know, about how many people to expect, and let them know that too. So that way it's well worth their time to be there for us as well.
Agent for that one?
This was their Black Dog my husband is their director of production, but this was their artisan tour house, so it was number 4. So if you went, you've been there. But it wasn't a spec house, and a lot of the artisan tours were spec homes, which was interesting. So this was a client build, but it's really beautiful. And then the house directly next door is being built right now as a spec house. You can see like the unfinished product as well. And then they have 2 coming like around the block. So it's a nice, yeah.
Awesome. Anything else on the new construction? All right. 4th of July, we are gonna be closed both, July 4th and July 5th. So if you have anything that's coming up that you are going to need our assistance on, like a new listing or whatnot, please let us know on those days prior to, so that we can be available to you. Any questions on, or anything to add on that, Heather?
If there's an emergency, feel free to shoot me a text.
Besides that.
Yeah.
And that's next week.
That's next.
Yep.
That's different.
As you're planning and it's the 3rd and you're like, oh my God, it's like you have Libra closed on Thursday and Friday. Yes, we are closed next Thursday and Friday.
Yep.
And we'll be back on Monday.
Is the 5th a bank holiday or not?
I don't know.
No.
I don't
No, I don't
think
think it is.
No, just the 4th.
Just, they can't have 4 days in a row. Oh.
Oh, yeah. Okay, next. These, that's you, Candy. We are doing so great, I think.
We are doing, you guys, I mean, you guys are doing awesome. I am just gonna make a note that if you, email me that you're done, you go in here. I have checked up on most people and a lot of people are done.
But that is a smaller
You're right,
cup
you're
and there
right.
still doesn't look like there's a lot of
You know,
people in there.
I'm just gonna make the disclaimer that if I have to go in and check your CE and that you're done, I'm not gonna put you in here.
Oh.
Because in
Email me.
reality, this should be full. But
Yeah.
right?
It should be more full, but I've had to go in and like send some emails.
Because we have like 4 days.
Yeah.
And that's what I was gonna
Everyone's
say.
doing really great. I'm so impressed with the
4 days.
office this year, like.
Like Candy, also the last day of the month is on Sunday.
Yes, we should talk about that.
Yeah, so they have to be in by Friday.
Do you guys know what happens when you don't have your CE in?
It's a massive problem.
Yeah.
If you have listings or transactions.
It really is actually a massive problem. Like your license is no longer gonna be active and that's
Oh,
not gonna be your listing.
State.
So it's why that's happened before. And it's not like, oops, we can just get it right back up. That's not how it works.
It takes us 7 days to get your license back.
So just FYI, this is not like, oh, this is, haha, funny. We're just trying to annoy you. It's real, right? And the license is gone. It's gone for 7 days.
And you remember too, the company that you're doing your classes through, they still have to turn it into the board. So it's not like if you get it done Friday at 10 PM, I don't think the board's gonna receive it I don't think they're gonna receive it, before the 30th. So you've just, please think
I
of
would
all
say
that.
if you don't have your CE done and you have anything on your calendar today that is not a appointment, I would take it off today and tomorrow if I was you.
Do your CE.
Just want to make a nice offer. If anybody doesn't get this done, I'll take over your listings for you.
Referral fee to pay.
I love it. Breaks all about opportunity. You know what? I'm not gonna encourage you to get it done. I'll just take that for you. All right,
Here to help.
You read my writing.
Pat Loney.
And Carla.
Neither one of them are here, but they're gonna be pleasantly surprised.
And again, everyone has been like doing really awesome at having it done this year, so I really appreciate that. And I appreciate all the communication, like I have 3 left or I have this. That's really helpful too, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Any questions on CE? We will no longer be talking about this until, so that's. Or maybe we should talk about it in July so that we don't have to talk about it in June. Okay, so lead generation, you guys, it started, was it last week? On Monday. So Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. We meet at 9:45. You bring a list of 25 people to call. You call from 10 to 11, and then you come back and you put your name on the board. We started out with like 1 person besides Eric and I and Candy. And by Tuesday, we had the board filled with people. Even if they're not coming out and actually doing the scripting, all of a sudden we see Royce's name up there. And then we see Bob come out of the office and say, what are you doing? It's really, really fun. It's like, it's a fun situation where we're just talking, we're having what the conversations are gonna look like. And then it's even more fun to come back and say, man, this person set 2 appointments or I set 1 appointment. And it's a lot easier to do lead generation when you're doing it with someone. And you don't have to be in the same room, but just knowing you're gonna come back and say, hey, I did 36 dials and 20 contacts. Is fun. So anyone that's doing it, maybe you guys can raise your hand too. I'm excited about it. I'm glad that people are coming in. let us know what you think about it, Sean.
I think it's great. I mean, it's like inspiring just to listen to other people talk, for one thing, and during the scripting, just to learn more about how to speak in different situations.
And Sean has been there every single day. Just so join us. Again, it's a good time. And after some scripting, we've actually talked about just building the confidence in how to switch up some of the wording, or the different areas that you can work on, if you're not getting the result that you want. Any questions around that? Who's gonna join us next week or tomorrow? I'll have fun without you. So I won't be there. There you go. All right. Okay, so we ended, I believe, on appraisal. So we still are not done with the transaction, right? So what happens after appraisal and what are some of the areas of risk that come up?
Title.
Title, okay? What about title? Like, let's just do the, okay, what about escrow? Right, because that comes up sometimes of things that need to be escrowed. What else in title
Liens
can be a risk?
Previous liens and bankruptcies, that sort of stuff attached to your name.
Is that I, E, or
I.e.
look, you guys can script and screw up, I can spell.
Proceed.
What else?
Hey,
Okay. What else?
easements.
Yeah, easements.
That kind of like same thing, right? Okay.
One of the hardest ones we've dealt with is private driveway, what are those called? Private driveway? Shared driveway agreements. Shared driveway agreements. Whew.
Shared anything.
Yeah, really, shared anything
Yeah.
title wise, that's not good.
Okay. So how many of you after appraisal were like, "Ah, there's no more risk, we're good"? A lot of people think that, right? So this is hard though. So what do we do in these situations? How are you prepping your clients about title work? Because even in the purchase agreement, in any like listing agreement or buyer agreement, it talks about title work, right? They have an option to work with whoever they want, right? But how do you prep this? Maybe I should ask this. Does anyone talk about title with anyone besides you need a title company? Okay, yes. There's a lot of no's that are like, no, I don't talk about this at all. Okay, if we don't talk about the things that could come up in title, right? And it's these things which are pretty big things. Is that something people are shocked at the end, where they're like, what are you talking about? That I don't know what you mean by escrow. Why do I have to have 1.5 times? Why do I I'm not doing that, right? And this is on the sell side. This is a shocker a lot of times to sellers if all of a sudden it's a large sum and now it's also getting held back, right? So how do we mitigate or how do we talk about that so it's not a risk?
Can you add a couple of things there? Can you add trust and power of attorney and remote closings?
And what?
Remote closing on the next line. Thank you.
Okay,
A lot of times our
I
people are not
think
here.
this is the one that has the most risk, and yet we don't talk about it. But can we talk about why we don't talk about this risk? Because who are we assuming is going to take care of this for us? But also what happens during that time frame, you still have to let people know, hey, guess what? You have a shared driveway, right? Title can't just randomly take care of it without your client knowing. Hey, there's encroachments. Because if your title company calls up and tells them, hey, there's encroachments on this property, what They're gonna be like, what are you talking about? And then they come to you and you're like, I have no idea. So what do we do? What do we do in this situation as an agent to prep a seller on these things?
First thing we do is make sure that they know who it is that's gonna be reaching out to them. So we say Melanie Joseph with Great North Title is going to be reaching out to you within the next week. And she is somebody we've worked with for a number of years, so she's somebody that you should trust with your personal information. If there's anybody else, give us a call first. If anyone else reaches out to you, give us a call first and we'll talk you through that. But when you get her information, you can trust her. And then if there's any questions that come up during your time with her, then make sure you just reach back out to us. She calls us.
I've never done this before, and I don't know, John, if you ever have either.
I've done everything.
The hard way.
Is it something that you could do with a seller even prior to getting a purchase? Because when do we introduce title? It's like the purchase agreement, you send the purchase agreement over. That's when title comes into the scenario with any seller and buyer, am I right?
Yeah.
What does that look like if you did that someone said no?
Always introduce, I always say this is who I use for title. If you want to use someone else, do that.
Do you introduce them though? Do you introduce client to title, like actual introduction to them, right, on the sell side prior to purchase
I
agreement?
don't say, hey, Melanie, these are my potential buyers. I want you to get to know them right now, but I give the contact information to
Because
them.
what I'm curious about is, has anyone ever contacted the title company as you're listing the property, right? You're assuming it's going to close. They're gonna use this title company to look up all these things for you prior to actually going on the market. Does anybody actually do that? Delaney,
Not all listings, but certain ones that we have questions about.
Derek, you do?
If there's things that I think might be a problem.
Then you can ask them to do a track check in advance from there. They'll look for any calls on title and anything else in advance to
If
get
a,
ahead of that.
if
I
a
mean,
seller is deceased and we're dealing with descendants or
Yeah,
something like that, or if we know that.
or the
there's an
trust comes
agreement
up or, okay.
They're shared.
The shed is clearly across the line.
Is there any reason, and this is why I was asking, is there any reason not as representing a seller to not contact the title company right away?
There is. If they do like a track search, there is. And what if you don't sell the house? I mean, you asked, so that's the risk. But I'm sorry, what if Derek doesn't sell the house? Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
He doesn't have.
So it's just a monetary piece. Okay. Okay, all right, so we inform them of the title company. Then things come up. What do we say? Do you guys talk through these things that can come up on title? Okay. Let's be really honest. Who talks through these things with their sellers? Okay, so right now, nobody's really talking through these things with their sellers.
Only see, there's normal real estate sales, right? So in
But
which,
this can happen with any.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So that's where I'm like, how do we do this again, before the risk happens, how do we inform them of it?
So does like fire or tornado too, but I don't talk about that. Like,
Yeah.
I guess part of it, and that he's making a point, right? If there's some, what do you talk about? When you raise all kinds of concerns before the concerns come. However, some transactions, if you know that it's an estate, and there's a trustee and that it's just happened, if you know that somebody's getting married during the transaction, if you know that, there's a divorce, if if there's certain things where we're aware that, hey, hold on a second, this could cause a more complicated title situation, then it absolutely gets brought up. It should get brought up, and if you don't know before you talk to them, talk to the title rep and say, hey, they're in the middle of divorce. Do we have to have the decree before we close? What has to happen so that at least you can discuss that with your clients up front.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments on that? Okay, so then defects come up. How do we deal with that?
I think if there's anything after the title work comes back, I'll talk to the seller about, what it actually is and what the resolution is or what the resolution has been in the past. And most importantly for a seller, they need to understand that there may be things on title that come up and that we do have ways to correct these things. There may be costs associated with it, but certainly out of our control and likely out of their control. And deal with them as they come up.
How many of you know how to talk about title? And when these things come up, do you just refer to the title company because you're not really sure what to say? Is that a reality? Because I feel like that might be a reality right now of like, okay, I don't know how to necessarily work through this portion, right? Which is fair, right? You don't need to be an expert, but we were just an expert on how do we combat an appraisal, right? What are the options for that, right? We had options because we knew what those options were and we were able to talk about that. So maybe this is an area, right, that we have an actual class with title of what are the options here, right? Like, what are the options if there's a lien on the property? What do you do? If a client comes up to me and says, there's a lien on the property, what are my options? And I say, I don't know, contact title. That's okay, but there's still things that we need to talk about as a real estate agent. Would you guys agree?
Say I talk to the title person and get the information, but then I always convey it to the seller.
Yeah. It's interesting because for years have thought, okay, it's best to have enough knowledge so that you understand these certain things that could come up. And at the same time, hire a loan officer, a specific loan officer that I've worked with for, 17 years, because I don't want to ever do their job, ever. And same thing with title. I don't want to do title's job. That's what they're very, very good at. That's what they're experts in. And so it's good to know the information. However, when something comes up, I'm always going to say, this is what I know, but you need to talk to Melanie to get all of the details. And she's going to walk you through exactly what has to happen, because they're the ones that are legally liable for everything that happens from a title standpoint. And I don't want to be the one, sharing title information because I'm not a title rep. So just a little bit different than the conveyance that Derek does, but that's a consideration.
Okay. Who else? Okay, so to mitigate this risk, we just refer to the title company. Is that what we're saying?
I think we need to have an understanding of what some of these things are.
It's really sticky in here right now. Like, there's a weird vibe because I don't know if we are comfortable with any of these things, and that's the point.
I don't think
Right?
most people are.
And so if we're not, this is a really great class for us to have. And if we get them in to talk about these things, because this comes up often, actually, all of these things do, right? And then if we're sitting here just learning to understand that in that first transaction, that becomes a problem because then we, right, are like, I don't know what they're talking about. And then you're trying to convey it because as an agent, you still have to be able to talk to your client about what's going on with the transaction. You don't have to be an expert in title, right? You don't have to be the one that comes up with all of the solutions, but you do have to know what the options are. And you need to be able to have open conversation about what those options look like and have enough knowledge to be able to have the conversation, right? So if someone comes up and there's a shared driveway, I work with this all the time in Minneapolis, right? That's a conversation that becomes really sticky because there's different things that come with that. Okay, what if we have to replace it? What's in the agreement for that? Who's gonna be the one that's doing, all of the shoveling and whatnot and salting? And what if someone gets hurt on that? There's so many things that go with that, right? But as an agent, we better know what all goes in that because otherwise that client's gonna learn what goes in that when they buy the house. So yes, I understand we don't have to be experts in this, but right now it feels really weird in here because everyone's like, I don't know much about this. And that's okay. But then say, hey, guess what? I think we need a class on this because I don't know much about this. And it might be a good idea that I'm equipped with enough information to be able to talk through this.
It's a great plug because in July we are having Great North Title here to host a class. So
I actually did not know that, but.
So when that calendar comes out, sign up for that, and that would be a great place to ask those
Candy,
questions.
is there a way for you to note these things that are listed here and make sure that gets to them? So at least you already did it.
Well, and here's the other part of this, right? Like when we go through a selling presentation, or we go through a buyer presentation. I'm gonna tell you, I did this as an agent, this is why I know it's sticky in here and everyone's like, ooh, right? Cause you're like, okay, so here's the inspection, and this is what we do in an inspection, this is what the appraisals, and this is what we do, and here's the options, in case this happens, this happens, this happens. Then we go to closing and then we're closed. Or we go to title and then we're closed. That's what we do in a buyer and a seller presentation, am I right? We don't talk about, hey, there's a potential for escrow. We need to talk about liens if there's ever any liens on the property. Why do we ask sellers if they've had any work done on the property? We want to make sure that everyone's paid. And if they are paid, that the lien waivers and everything was satisfied, correct? So these are very big things to talk about. This is not like a just push over and give it to the title company, right? And in recent years, a lot of people are doing work on their house. And there's also things that are not getting paid. There's large credit card bills. There's a lot of different things where it's like, that's a big one. And then this one is actually a big one, because if you go in and all of a sudden you agree upon replacing a mainline sewer and you're closing in 30 days, and they're gonna have to hold $15,000, but actually it's 1.5 times the $15,000, and they don't know that that's coming back to them. That's on you, because you haven't discussed this with that seller yet, and then they are really, really mad. Okay, so I understand, it's like, oh, we don't want to talk about the things that could come up as a risk, but if we don't talk about the things that could potentially come up during a transaction, and you don't have to go through and be like, it's doomsday, but you need to at least make them aware, hey, something like escrow might happen. If we have a really large fix, and it's gonna be 1.5% that you're gonna have to hold in on that. Do you have any questions around that? What could that maybe be? It could potentially be if something happens with the main line, right? Or something larger needs to be fixed that we can't have done prior to closing. That's not scary, right? That's just a conversation allowing them to know what to expect. Right.
So I'd like to support you on this, the need.
I love that.
Yeah, when I look at every single one of these, every one of these is a high, if any of these come up, it's a high probability that you're delaying a closing. So, because each one of these is problematic, they all take time, For example, any work, most title companies will say along the lien standpoint, most title companies' standard is, and this is where you have to be careful, because there's a title company on the other side telling you what you need to do. So the buyer's title company is gonna say, if it's Edina or Coldwell, they're gonna say, any work that's been done in the last 6 months on the property, not only do we want a paid receipt for that, but we want a lien release for that as well. And it used to be that if it was under $500, we just need a paid receipt, and now if it's over $500, we need a paid receipt and a lien release. It's not that case with a couple of the really big companies right now. They're asking you for lien releases on anything. So if you do work on a property and it costs you $200 to fix something, then they see it somehow. Like, one of the ways they see it, the title companies now will almost always look, or the lenders will look on the MLS and see what you have for home improvements, and they'll note your home improvements.
Well, and this is also part of your inspection addendums, right? So if we go back, this all plays into each other, because in an inspection addendum, you have it done by a licensed bonded contractor, and that all work will be done and receipts will be given to title, usually at least 7 days before closing. Are we correct on that? Did we write that in? Right? So that's all, like, this is all falling in place. And when you write that into an addendum or an amendment, right? They're like, well, why are you writing that? Well, it's because of this, to make sure that we are getting everything done and it's closing on time. Because that becomes, if they don't know about this and that this could have potential of that, and you're not on top of it, and then the closing is delayed, who do they blame that on?
Person who didn't get the paid receipt and lien release.
Or who didn't, it's like, it's gonna come back, even if it wasn't you as the agent, but like, oh, we delayed by 3 weeks because this, and this wasn't done. And then they talk to their friend, they're like, it's probably your agent who doesn't know anything, right? So it's like, as long as you keep them ahead of anything that can happen. And no, it's not like hey, let's put up a whole bunch of red flags. It's more of like, hey, here's a need to know, right? You go to the doctor and like, these are all the things that can happen when you take this medicine. You still take the medicine. Right? Okay. Do we want to get into each one of these separately? No, because it all can be different. The point of making sure that you know what these are and coming to the class in July is kind of where we stand with it. Yes? Did you get a picture of this, Kim? Okay, so after we get title, everything is great. Now we're on to closing. What can happen on closing day?
Money on a walkthrough,
Final walk.
on a walkthrough.
I had a final walkthrough where the seller pulled up a rug and they had this nice 6 foot by 5 foot spot on the hardwood floor that was jet black. Was lovely. It was a wonderful moment.
Okay? And some of this too, right? Like these things don't have, like they can be talked about at a sit down with the seller, but how are we keeping ahead of all of this?
You should-
Next step, right? Maybe this almost, if you're thinking of all this stuff, this could be your smart plan
Yes.
for a seller. Hey, we are through appraisal. Now we're on to title work. These are the things that can come up in title work, right? That can be a canned email that is sent out in the next step, right? 2 days later, a week later, hey, guess what? These are the things that we're gonna have to do. We're gonna have to set up a final walkthrough. They're gonna come in and make sure everything's done. And then we're gonna have to also make sure that this stuff is done, right? Like, these are the emails that you can be sending out. And then the next touch is the phone call. Hey, did you get my email about final walkthrough and what it looks like on closing day? We're gonna need a set of keys. Do you have all of the remotes out? Like, these are all things that it's, again, you're just trying to keep a step ahead. Clean. Oh,
Yeah, just two things with the final walkthrough, that Jordan put together that we do consistently every single time is one, she reads through, the purchase agreement and any addendums and then puts a list together of things to attend to. So if we got a bill of sale for personal property for the, the pool table, plus we've got, they fixed the refrigerator, they did a bunch of stuff. Those are all on a list for me to know, but before you go into the walkthrough, these are things to attend to and make sure that they are still the same as they were when we made that
would
agreement.
that be a really good idea to send to the buyer or to the buyer or to the seller, right? Or I guess we're talking about
Right
sellers.
before?
We send to the seller, like, these are the things, are these all done? Is there, you know what I mean? Like, are all these things done?
Mhm.
And sometimes if the sellers are feeling in a good mood, they're like, we also did these things that they requested, but we didn't agree to, right? And we can actually add that, send it to the buyer's agent, say, hey, these are all the things that were done. Am I missing anything? Because we're all ready for your final walkthrough, right?
Seller side.
Yeah, but even on the seller side, saying, hey, the seller's completed all these as a seller's agent to the buyer's agent. Because how many buyer's agents forget what they're doing until the buyer comes in and they're like, well, yeah, but did they fix this? And the buyer's agent's like, ooh, I don't know, I can't remember. Let me just look at the amendment. Was that something they were gonna fix? That happens, right? Whereas, I mean, that buyer agent, if you send it to him and say, these are all the things we said we were gonna do, these are all completed, let me know if you have anything else, they'd be like, this is
Jamie,
great.
how about the biggest question, the question I hear from every single seller, how clean should our house be? Someone's got to, I want to hear what people say because this is final walkthrough,
I believe the expectation is the home should be in similar condition to the condition that it was when the buyers purchased it or made the offer. So that means
They can leave everything in the fridge.
if it was spotlessly clean at the time that they saw it, then it should be spotlessly clean at the time it's turned over. If it's like trashed and gross, then I don't think there's a problem turning it over trashed and gross as long as there's not personal property and garbage left.
Yeah. Debris and stuff. Interesting. What other people say?
Room swept clean.
I was gonna say, it says in the PA, it has to be a broom swept condition.
What does that mean?
It's no chunks of rice in the cabinet.
In the cabinet? I thought inside the cabinets, I thought that was okay.
There shouldn't be any debris left in the house. It should be swept away.
Yes,
What else? It's gotta get better than that.
Well, that's what the PA says.
that's what.
Anyone else? Bethany Nelson team? You have a checklist. Oh, there you go.
For your sellers.
Of course they do. Of
Refrigerators cleaned out.
course they do.
We
That's
have a
awesome.
prepare for photos checklist and then we have a.
It
report
was
for-
standard though,
Yeah, that's the question.
like cupboards cleaned out.
Okay, so this is something, tell me what you
And I know when I walk into one of my properties and somebody's cleaned it out and we're like, all right, well, thanks. I mean, yes,
Yeah.
there's no chunks of rice in there,
You're right.
Put my own food in
You're
that.
right, there's a big difference in standard. So imagine, I say to the seller, I say, okay, so I'll say to Derek, that's a great question. The condition I'd like you to put it in is the condition you would like your house to be in when you move into it.
Ooh, that's it, but what if, my condition, well, right now, our conditions are all different.
Yeah.
Right?
So imagine he's moving into a new house. Does he want to open the refrigerator and see all the stuff spilled all over and look terrible? And if because he's clearly saying everyone's
It's a
different.
standard that's being set, right?
Standards change on.
What if that standard was different and you have that discussion with the buyer that's coming in, right? Because if your standard that you set for your seller is, I want it to be in the same condition as it was when they saw it, and the buyer's standard coming in comes into the final walkthrough and is like, no, I wanted everything clean. And I wanted the toilet scrubbed and I wanted all this stuff. Now all of a sudden it's like, these are the two people that matter what the standards are, right? So if we're not asking that buyer's agent what the standard is for that buyer, does it matter what we think? If all of a sudden they're like, because how many times at that point is it then you as a listing agent is paying whatever amount of money to get that thing clean for this buyer? That's what happens, right?
But what I find is that people in that stressful situation, if they think about what it's like for a buyer to move into a house themselves, they're like, and oftentimes they are buying another house. So it's nice, like, okay, you're about to buy another house, what condition you want to see that in when you go there? It just kind of steps it up a little, gives them a little bit of accountability.
Nobody is thinking someone else when they're selling a house besides the fact of how stressed out they are. Like, when's the last time even when I moved, I was not thinking about the buyers that were coming into my house. I was thinking about how do I get this stuff out? And now I'm moving into the next house and that house better be really great because we're human and humans think about what they need in that moment, not who's moving in. Like, especially if it's not a good, you know what I mean? They had to spend a lot of money or do a lot of things. They're like, it's fine. They can move in at whatever. That's where I think it has to be an actual set standard.
Bethany, can you share your checklist?
Yeah, we're fine tuning it right now, but we're done.
That would be really
There's
helpful.
also a checklist on the agent drive that you can learn.
Is there?
A walkthrough.
And I think
Can you
this
tell us
also
more about the
goes,
agent drive? I don't know anything about that actually.
it's shared with all agents.
You did no basis.
It's on Google. Rick, it's a Google Drive. Rick, Jordan's gonna have to.
I'm using
for it.
it.
I'll make sure
Drive.
I'll send it out. I'll send out the link.
Tell me what that is.
But I think this goes back to, we're now at the end of this transaction, right? Except for transaction and pass, right? After close and pass. What is the biggest thing that we're noticing is communication between the two agents, right? When there is really great communication between listing agent and buying agent, what usually happens? When there are assumptions between the two, what usually happens? Lots of fires,
More flying, less color.
right? And then it's stressful. And then there's money that's getting spent by one side or the other usually. Why? Because at some point in time you realize, okay, I can't go back to the client because I never actually told them this. So now it's my responsibility. Right? But if you tell them all these things and you prep them on that, is it a lot easier to say, hey, you know what? We talked about the standard of clean, what would it had to be in when you moved out of the home, right? We talked about it with the buyers and this they agreed upon, this is agreed upon. It's not in that condition and now they're requesting a professional cleaner to come in. It's gonna cost about that. Is that a really easy conversation to have if you've already had the conversation? But if you haven't, and then you're like, the place isn't clean and you now owe $800. They're like, no, I don't. Too bad, we're closed. I'm not doing anything. I don't know if you've seen a pattern here. It's about communication. It's about how to talk to people. It's about how to connect, it's about how to ask the right question. And we didn't plug this today because we already talked about it. The Phil Jones class that I took on Monday was probably one of the best classes that I have taken in a really, really long time besides Value Square. And why? Because what he says in there is this. That man probably knows nothing about real estate, and I can guarantee he could outsell most real estate agents by getting his license today. Why? Because he knows how to connect with people. He knows how to get information that's needed to make a decision in a real estate transaction. And he knows how to mitigate risk.
You can still sign up for it.
That's what I was gonna say. So it's also tomorrow. But honestly, all of these things, it's knowledge, but it's also about communication. How do you speak to your client about it? Are you coming at it on a defensive, like, oh no, I need to tell them this because I haven't? Or is it something you already talked about and now you can calm their nerves and go through the option? Are you speaking to the buyer's agent with, hey, here's some different things that we can do for solutions? What do you think would be best in this transaction? Is a lot better than, hey, guess what? You did this, or we're not doing this. Because now all of a sudden it's this. And no one really wins in that situation, let's be honest. And you're probably gonna have to work with this person at some point in time.
I think that when it comes to closing and people's standards for the work that needs to be done, the cleaning, I think, is really difficult. And I think the only way to really truly protect yourself, either as a seller or as a seller's agent, is to have the home professionally cleaned. And that's really only going to eliminate maybe 80 or 90% of the problems, because you still have the people that come in that are going to have a problem with it. But I think also you can get this headed in the right direction as it relates to like your inspection items or work requests, that type of thing, by just having complete clarity on exactly what is being done and who is doing it. And as a matter of practice, I think we all would benefit if we stopped asking any sellers to do any work on property themselves. Even though plenty of people are very capable and it may turn out really great, I've just had many problems over the years where the seller does work. And I can tell you that if a seller has allowed deferred maintenance in their home for years, what's to say that the fix that they provide is going to be any better than what they've already provided? So we had people request that we put batteries in smoke detectors. Okay, that's great. Do I want the seller's 10-year-old smoke detectors with a fresh battery in it protecting my family? Probably not. Like, I don't know. As an agent, I think we could probably like get our buyer clients going in the right direction on that, rather than even bringing it in or tasking the seller with it.
So then you think a good, for the whole, cleaning the whole house, I think it would be a good idea to ask the listing agent to ask their seller, hey, like my buyers have preferred the company to come in, like, do you mind if they clean the house before closing? Oh, you don't have to worry about that.
I mean, my personal feeling is that they use people that either the seller knows or we know as an agent, because you have someone else's contractor, anybody come in and something gets broken, whatever. Now it's all of a sudden, hey,
So the point of keeping it up is the buyers pay for it.
I mean, sure.
They could also have it cleaned right after closing, though,
Yeah.
too, like when
And that also is a great opportunity to send your, preferred whatever, and that could be your closing gift. Like a gift card to that cleaner or whatever. I mean, there's ways to do that. And honestly, if that's on the checklist as a buyer, right? You say, hey, guess what? We're closing. If this is something that you'd like, make sure that we have the scheduled professional cleaners in. Closings here, why don't we get them scheduled at here?
Or if
You know what I mean? That
wanna
could
do
be part of your checklist if that's something that's important to them.
If you want to do it differently, just request that they have the seller has the home professionally cleaned just prior to closing. If they hire, like who they hire is their own thing, but if you require it and it's part of the purchase agreement, then they're gonna worry a lot less about $250 when they're getting 250,000 than they are after they've already gotten their 250,000, then you're asking them for 250.
So I'll share this if nobody uses it against me in a multiple offer situation. One of our multiple offer tactics, just these little pieces, are to write in there that the buyer will pay for a professional cleaner or the seller. So in a multiple offer situation, that's one thing that they don't have to worry about at the end of the transaction, you know, and we work, you know, obviously you get the pricing and stuff, and you know what that looks like for your buyer, and that could be a little just push, so.
Have that done after.
Usually the day before closing or the day out, depending upon the move. Like if they've moved their stuff out, it's usually the day of closing now.
The other
Almost
piece
always.
here is like in the final walkthrough, the things that come up are the cleaning or the things that were not done, right? Should you know as a seller's agent, the things that should have been done and that are not done prior to that final walkthrough?
Yes.
Right? So if all of a sudden you do not have, the seller hasn't done X, Y, Z, okay, right? They were supposed to, I don't know, replace a faucet. You know they haven't replaced a faucet. That buyer, what do we do a lot of times for like, oh, are they gonna like not close because the faucet isn't replaced? That's what goes through everybody's mind. Or the seller, if you have a stubborn seller, which no one ever has that, and they're like, they're not gonna close if this doesn't happen. Are you kidding? You said you were gonna do this. This is a legal and binding contract. They actually they don't have to close that, right? But why are you putting yourself in that scenario? So if it's not done, why would you not let them know it's not done versus waiting till the final walkthrough? Then they're walking into this home they're buying. You're trying to sell this home, and then there's a problem.
I think that's what I run into most often, and I don't think agents even know that the work is done. They, after appraisal goes through, they don't talk to their clients until it's close to closing day. They have no idea the repairs aren't made. Yeah. Yep.
So as an agent, as a listing agent though, should we know what needs to be done?
Right,
Should
I
we
think
have
that's
that,
the
should we
part,
have this
yeah.
list, right? And we should be sending that to them every single week in our check-in, like we did when they were like, hey, is the home sold? How many offers did we get? How was the open house? Hey, did you guys get this checklist done yet? Awesome, what's done and what do you still need to do and how can we help? Right? And if it's a really long list, maybe it's like twice a week you send that email.
Well,
Okay, great, when is that getting scheduled out?
you should know in the beginning when you form the relationship with the realtor, whether they're potentially an older realtor that's doing it part-time, you know, potentially a part-time realtor, maybe somebody who's brand new, maybe who's somebody who's bad, because 75% of them are not great. And it's really important, like we always, in the beginning, right? In the beginning, we always, you know, I always say to Jordan, I said, okay, this realtor, I've learned that they might be a little bit slow, so you're gonna have to do some of their job for them.
Yeah.
And she does, you know, and that's okay. That's gonna happen maybe 50% of the time. But
At least
be
you're aware of
that
it.
gonna have
You're
to do-
aware of it, like,
Yeah.
hey, guess what? We're gonna have to keep on top of this portion of it.
be
And you
proactive.
can know immediately, usually when that happens. Anything else in the final walkthrough that you can prep your seller with?
I was gonna talk about the buyer.
No, sell side, if we can prep the seller with, right? Okay, no fun.
They shouldn't be in the house for the fun walkthrough.
Oh, yeah, they should have to out.
They should be moved out.
They should be moved out and they shouldn't be
Okay,
there.
so that's the other thing. Actually, that's a great point. Final walkthrough, they should be moved out, or what if their stuff is all boxed up? Right? Because sometimes there's like the moving truck, how many times moving truck comes in at 7 AM, 8 AM, day of closing? You had the final walkthrough the day before, right? But all of the boxes are smashed up against the wall that you said you were gonna repair, and then it was in the bathroom where you said you were gonna, you know, replace the toilet and the tile. Like, what is it supposed to look like during the final walkthrough? I mean, that's another real question.
And when are they actually legally, thank goodness we have a broker in here, but I don't know where Kevin is, but when are they legally supposed to be moved out based on the contract? You know, so if you're there 2 hours before closing and the closing's not till 10 o'clock and you don't actually transfer title till 10:45, I'm telling you, we've been in a lot of situations where it's down to the wire. You know, people getting their stuff out or not even.
So how do we prep the seller for that? Like, cause right now we're talking about the seller, right? And that's the seller that has their stuff still in there. Like, how do we prep them for that? Because immediately on the buy side, they see that everything's still getting moved out and they weren't warned about that, right? And they're like, they were supposed to be out. I mean, that agent isn't even parked yet, and that listing agent is getting a call.
And that could be the night before.
That
I
could
mean,
be
yeah.
whenever it is, right? But I think, again, it goes to communication. What is the house going to look like in final walkthrough condition? If they're asking for it 48 hours before and you aren't moved out yet, what should you say? Hey, you're not moved out yet. And the cleaner's coming tomorrow. Right? Versus, you know, all of a sudden they walk in, everything's everywhere. They just saw the gigantic stain that was covered by the rug. You should probably let them know.
You know, I had that conversation with the seller back when we're accepting the purchase agreement and the closing date. Because I always tell my buyers, we're gonna go the day before, so if there's anything wrong, there's time to get it fixed before closing.
Yep.
And I tell the sellers, you should expect, and it needs to be ready. So would you be able to do that if this was the closing date, or do we need to, you know, counter offer and adjust the closing date? But I set that expectation when we're accepting the offer, not, you know, the day before closing.
Well, and like anything, you're accepting the offer, you tell them that. You should probably tell them it 2 weeks before, and you should probably tell them it again the week of, right? Because if you're busy as an agent or as a human being, how many reminders do you need? I need one like an hour before the meeting, and then it pops up again 30 minutes before.
And if they only do it every 10 years, they definitely, this is not something that's part of their routine.
The reality of all of this is that we do this every day. This is why we're going through this. We do this every single day. But what we forget is they do not. And every detail that we think is just, is not a detail that should ever be missed. Because they're gonna experience it, but how are they gonna experience it? Are they gonna experience it because you told them about it and they were prepared for it? Or are they gonna get sideswiped by something, good or bad, because you haven't told them what the process actually looks like? Because part of our job is to hold their hand through this entire process. Not to open the door, not just to write the contract. And if that's what you believe is your job, good luck in like the upcoming years, right? Because it's gonna get a lot more difficult if you can't do this for your client. And right now, if we wanna be really honest, a lot of us are not going through all of this with their client. We're not. We're like a gerbil on a wheel, right? Next, 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 and there's not always the connection piece. Am I off on that, or am I accurate on that? And if we did this for every single client and we connected, do you believe that your business would look completely different? Do you believe you'd have more referral-based business instead of them sitting in front of someone and being like, hey, this is the first time we met? And if it is the first time that you met and you went through all of this and you connected with them by asking them stuff and then preparing them, do you think that you're gonna get more listings? I can guarantee you are, because most agents and a lot of the really big agents go in and talk about how fantastic they are and how great, you know, they're in networking and blah. Nobody really cares about that in the long term. They want to be cared about. They want to get to the goal of selling the house for whatever reason that might be. Part of the Phil Jones things, he said, you know, if you sit down and you don't even bring out a listing presentation and you ask them questions of why they fell in love with the house, and then you help them fall out of love and why they're moving on to the next thing, how much easier is it going to be to get that transaction? Pretty easy, right? All of a sudden you listen to their whole story, you connected with them, you understand what they love about it, you got in deeper, and all of a sudden in that, they're gonna divulge what the motivation is. Well, we fell in love because we love the neighborhood, but things have changed. Yada, yada, yada. After that, then you go into, hey, this is what it looks like. Do you want to go through that process? If that listing agreement isn't signed by the end of that, I would be shocked. All right, do we have any questions on this? signed up for Phil Jones tomorrow, you should be. Like, I really truly mean that. You absolutely should be. The things that you can learn in that, and I've listened to the book, I've listened to the audio, I've read the book, all the things, right? Done all of that. And taking that class on Monday, I'm like, within the first hour and a half, I had 6 pages of full-on just notes everywhere. And it also was like, there's different things that you can, I mean, my daughter was in there. She's 10, now she's 11 because it was her birthday. And you know what she did? She sat there and she like, we were in a break and she's like, you know, Mom, I don't know if this is for you, but you should probably go to Reese's game tomorrow. And I was like, it was like a sponge, right? And she was listening to the thing. And all of a sudden, I mean, that's terrifying because she's also like, you know, gonna use this against me at some point. But like, the point is like, even a child is listening to this and is like, oh, I can ask questions like this. If she's 10 and can recognize that there's value in a class that her mom's taking, in order for her to get something that she wants, either she's really smart or it's just human nature to be like, how do I ask better questions? Right? All right, wants and needs, real quick. Can I do this real quick? Yeah. You
And
can
then
do
we'll
whatever
totally-
you want to say.
So, if some of you guys remember,
I'm
we had
gonna
Mike
go
from,
downstairs and help with.
but we had Mike from North Mallow here, like 6 months ago or something, and he was gonna come today, but he's expecting his second baby, and so just dropped his stuff off. But he's still taking orders. So they now make these little kits, so I'm gonna pass this around, where this is, $6, he said. It has all the stuff you need for like one s'mores, so a fun little open house gift or something, but he can now like print your information on here, so, so it says like, so he can print these, it can have like whatever you want on there at the bottom, that one says like something from me, thank you, something. And then he also now can print these sticks that, you know, makes sense. So he put North Mallow on there, but that could be your logo, it could be your phone number, it could be whatever. And then also these are like a little thank you, and it has enough for 4 s'mores. Again, it says congratulations on your new home from Candy Cots, but it could say your stuff on there. He just wanted to make an example. And I did put some of this stuff in the briefing the other day because I was like, well, it probably doesn't have to sit in my office. So these are way more full than what it is showing here. But yeah, so, and you could put whatever message you want on here, like happy home anniversary or whatever. And I have it written down somewhere. I think these are like $22 maybe, something like that, but super cute. So he couldn't be here today to like bring us a bunch of candy. Again, does he ship those? I think he would ship them. That would be a good question for him. And then I'm gonna put his cards in the back, and I'll put this in the back in case you wanna check it out. But yeah, so he is still taking orders, but, and we'll have him in here to like. Okay, I'll let you guys do one. Thank you.
Are there any wants and needs?
Yeah, I have a new listing coming on. It'll be coming soon on July 15th. It's in Minnetonka. One owner, they built it in 85, 4 beds, 2 baths, about 2,600 square feet. Massive 4-car garage. So if you have somebody who's like a car junkie, this is the place.
How much is it?
About 6. She did the comps and said 630 is about where it'll comp out. But, so off market.
I've got 2 listings coming up, Brooklyn Center, 4-bedroom, 2-bath split level, for $330, and that'll be going on the week after the 4th of July, and then the end of July, or maybe the first week of August, I've got a 5-bedroom, 3-bath, Rambler right off of 6 and 101 in Plymouth, for $550, right off of a pond, screen and porch, really pretty. So why is that?
Awesome. Anyone else?
I have a buyer looking in the West Metro, anywhere really in the West Metro, up to $1 million, 4 beds plus, 4 baths plus. For decent sized yard, size square footage, just moved back here from Wisconsin.
Awesome. Thank you. Anyone else?
Maybe the bigger house.
Somebody's gotta go.
Yes.
I'm super new here. I've worked with commercial and residential, I have a buyer for Southeast 1031. Anything commercial at the metro area, off market preferably.
Yeah, what kind of price?
Depends. We can do that. That's about that.
Welcome to the office.
Thank you. Okay, send them to Lydia, please.
Yes. Send everything to Lydia.
And then lunch is downstairs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see.
Let's get the scroll in here.
It's gonna be sad.